Yeah, great.
Whoa, this ain't one.
Be down the side. And but I appreciate everybody on the chat tonight for your comments. Well, welcome to the Bee Connection tonight. Appreciate everybody in the chat showing up so far, and I'm sure we'll have many more people come in. Some of you probably already noticed that we've changed our starting time to 8:30. This is due to my little girl having so many practices, and it makes me feel bad that Tom and Melissa and Lee and everybody else has had to kind of start to show up. So we're definitely going to do just a little bit later, and maybe that'll help people on the West Coast to get in, and get a little bite to eat, and then come on to the show. So finally around here, we finally got a little rain this afternoon, and that's been 3 weeks without any rain. So that little shower of rain was quite nice, and it did cool things off here. Bees are doing pretty good, and hadn't really messed with them much. And our goldenrod has just started blooming in the mountains of North Carolina. So anyway, if you haven't started putting some feed on your bees, if they're like colonies, you might want to do that. So, but that's about all I've done in my bee yard. Tom, Melissa, you guys have been fairly busy here lately. What's going on with you guys?
Well, Melissa and I kind of helped a little bit, but we spent a lot of time today editing some videos and putting some videos on YouTube. So I think you got 3 done.
Yeah.
So we've had some video and some content. Some of this went back to when we were on one of the chats, I think a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about.
No, it was just last week.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty positive it was last week.
Well, anyway, I believe Charlie, maybe Sawmill Charlie, might have been a couple other people asking about the extraction process that we had, and we had taken some video. We just hadn't tried to edit anything together at that point, so we were working on that. And then she was trying to do a short video of the speed fill machine that we purchased from John Hill for doing some cream honey. So that's kind of what we worked on here today. And so I did notice, yesterday we were taking some pictures and doing some short video in one of the bee yards that we have. That's our kind of our far most western yard. And interestingly enough, I noticed there were several different plants up there. If I can remember all of them, we had ironweed. What else was it? Help me out there. There were several of them.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to forget them all. Say again.
Yellow wingstem, probably.
Yep. Wingstem. That's the purple that's the yellow flower that has the drooping petals on it that look like a black-eyed Susan without the black eye, basically, right?
Yep. That's right.
We had,
look like Queen Anne lace.
there's another one that looks similar to what they call Queen's Anne lace, but it's not that. I don't know if I can pull back up what I had on there, but we found several different ones that were out in this yard, particular that were all blooming, and bees were working it. I mean, pretty well, honestly. So, and then when I went back, I went over there and checked those colonies because I happened to be out that way having some service work done to my truck. But I wanted to stop by that bee yard. I didn't have anything with me to really make any adjustments with the colonies, but I at least got in them and noticed that there was actually a lot of wet nectar. I already put 1 gallon of feed on them, or 1 gallon of 3/4 to 1 feed on them with some Hive Alive in it a little over a week ago, just to kind of stimulate them after my last Apigard treatment. And it seemed to it seemed to do pretty good. All those colonies all looked very well. I mean, we didn't have any problems, and probably the nectar that's coming in, I'm not going to feed them anymore for the time being until I see a slowdown. But all those colonies looked really well. Pretty happy with that. I don't know that all those colony or all the yards that I've got are doing the exact same thing. I think it happens to be where that colony's at. So it's probably going to be really hit and miss for us. So there are going to be some that I'm going to go back out, hopefully either tomorrow or over the weekend if I get a second, and put some more feed on them. I'll probably switch to a 1-to-1 at that point in time. So I'll stimulate them still, but I'll also add a little bit of weight. So I'm not looking to really hit them with the 2-to-1 right now to build up, because most of the colonies are okay. Some of my nukes that I had done, the later ones, still need a little bit of feed. So we'll kind of focus on them a little bit harder. But we have a market coming up this weekend, a new one that's in the St. Louis County. Anxious to see how that does, even though there's a chance of rain. And just trying to catch up on some miscellaneous stuff. So that's my story.
And you're going to stick to it, huh?
Yes, sir.
I've seen Lisa on here. I've been watching her. She's been doing a lot of traveling here lately, so I'm a little jealous of everywhere she's been at here lately. And I guess it's Keith's birthday and Lisa's birthday, so happy birthday to both of you guys today. And,
Yes, Keith Spellman and Lisa, both of you, happy birthday.
Absolutely. So, JW, what's going on down your neck of woods? Is it air conditioned weather down here where you are?
Yeah, I'm active.
On?
Like I said earlier, it's really been hot up here. I've been doing the same as Tom and Melissa's, trying to treat bees. And I'm holding off now to Saturday. It's supposed to cool back down. So I've got one more bunch of bees to give an apiguard treatment to that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to finish off with some. I've got some Apivar left that if I don't use, it's going to expire here in about a month. So I'm going to use it up, but I've got about 40 or 50 strips of it left that expires 11/24. So I'm going to use it just to get rid of it. So.
Right. Well, speaking of treatments, I've got a question for y'all. I got a friend of mine that used some formic acid. Our temperatures were running right around 84, 86 degrees. His colonies were in full sunlight, but he ended up having, out of his 5 colonies, he had 1 to abscond, and 3 of them, he killed the queen inside their colony. So I kind of felt like maybe because it was in direct sunlight that maybe those houses got a little hot. But what do you guys think about that?
My personal opinion, that's marginal hot for high temperatures for formic.
That's kind of what I had a feeling
I'll
about.
hardly go for formic if it's going to be over 80 myself personally in this area, because we have high humidity here.
Right.
People don't realize that, but it's our humidity is ferocious, and it's really been rough here in the last few days.
Yeah. I felt like in that direct sunlight, that was probably too hot for those colonies.
Yeah.
And it definitely did some damage on them.
Formic Pro is between 50 and 85. And I could only assume, too, thinking that humidity may play a big role in that. So if you're 84 and extremely humid, you might be pushing the envelope, because I feel like anytime that we have higher humidity, even when we're borderline or marginal on some of those temperatures with those treatments, especially those acids, I think. I feel like that humidity plays a large role in how that transfers through the hive. I might be completely off base on that, but again, through some of my observations of some of those nukes that I ran out of those bees I ran out of those nukes, I feel like that I was still under some of those temperature thresholds. Now I'm not talking specifically Formic Pro, I'm talking Apiguard, but that's still an acid. So it appears that I think that humidity helped to play a role in pushing them over the edge on that, because I still wasn't I was still within the temperature threshold. There was a couple of things that were a little bit off. So that's my own personal feeling on it.
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah, I didn't know about the low humidity, and I'll definitely mention that to him and pass it along. I mean, I really felt bad that he lost all of his bees like that, his queens, and he just got a couple of queens off of me for some nukes, and now he was going to end up having to add those to some of the colonies. So let's see. See, it looks like Charlie's there. Hey, Charlie, how's it going tonight?
Good. Yeah, as far as the aprivar, my next week here it'll be between 75 and 80 degrees and low humidity. Now, I talked to Nod Guy himself, and he says, humidity doesn't have anything to do with it. Well, I disagree. I think it intensifies, just like, if it's 90 degrees but it feels like 105 because of humidity.
Right.
And I think bees react just like what we do when it comes to heat and humidity. And it intensifies the gas out of that stuff. And I won't use it. Because, the first 4 days of pro is the most harsh. And if it's super high, it'll off gas, a lot more.
Yeah.
And usually it's September. That's the thing about me with apricot. I've been reading about that, and I know that Tom and Melissa have used it, and it's kind of got the same parameters as pro as far as weather conditions. And it'll shut the brood down. So I don't want to use it in September. I want to use it in July and August, but I can't use it.
Right.
It's just too hot and humid. And then I was researching after you guys were talking about it here a couple of weeks ago. And I found out with nukes, it's 12 grams, 12.5 actually.
Oh,
But
okay.
it also had a
Definitely not 25.
lot.
Definitely not 25. Ask me how I know.
I know. Well, when you said that, then I started going to Vena Pharma and reading. There's about 7 or 8 pages of all their parameters that they talk about. They talk about 77 degrees for apricot, and then at that point it should be at 25 grams. And then you watch Bob Binney. The one movie was treatment 2023, and he gets into that where we wouldn't dare put it on at 95 degrees. Half a dose, maybe. And then also it depends on whether it's a single brood chamber with double brood chamber and, and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just, it's like I put single pads of pro on my nukes, but now there was a Pennsylvania inspector, in this one chat I was at. I said, now wait a minute, not 5, but 5/5, which I says I have a vertical 10 frame deep. And and they were also discussing like my hives are set up just like a regular full size. I have a screen bottom board. I have a IPM board that goes in. I have a full wide open entrance on 5 screen. I have an inner cover, telecover. But then they were also talking about, you buy these cheap nuke boxes where they have a disc and just a round hole and it's a solid bottom board. And I don't think they have any ventilation screens underneath. Yes, you got to watch it with that because you're confining them even more. So,
yeah,
I did a little video last week on his queue. It was 84 that day, and I had treated some of my bigger starter hives with apricot, and I never used any acids on any of my nukes. And I treated my nukes with oxalic acid vapor, and I don't know if anybody looked at I actually went around and I videoed every individual hive, and the hives that I had apricot on wasn't bearded as badly as the nukes and smaller hives that I treated with oxalic acid vapor. And I done it all at the same time. I put a little bit. I thought that was interesting. I just did it as an experiment to see that my oxalic acid vapor hives at 84 degrees uh, were birding a lot, or quite a bit worse than what the highs with the equal was.
Yeah. And Vincent asked, has any of you guys used oxide vaporization? And if so, how many times and how far apart? I will say I use OA. That's my go-to. I like to use it up here. We do that about November. I usually just do one treatment in November, and then probably if I can get another warm day between November and Christmas, I'll try to do one more hit on the bees at that point in time. And then I do a spring OA in March as our bees are starting to kick up. And if the bees are bad in the during the summer, I'll usually put in some hops or some thymol or something like that during the summer, and that formulation works really well for where I'm at. So
We only use OAV in the winter for kind of a initial cleanup, everything residual cleanup, and then kind of to prep for spring, so they're clean coming into spring. But yeah, and right after we pull stupors, we use Apiguard. And when we do OAV in the winter, we usually only do it once, maybe twice.
Yeah, we try to get 2 of them done. Usually somewhere around the beginning of the year, end of the year, beginning of the year. Seems like for us anyway, where we are at, you're looking for that broodless cycle to be really that 90. I want to say it's 98. Don't quote me. And if anybody knows the exact number on that, please correct me. I want to say it was close to 96 or 98%
Broodless.
effectiveness when you're broodless. So there's no cappings basically. And for us, it seems like that really doesn't happen until the very, very tail end of the year, because at that point, sometimes we can actually still have a little bit of green grass around here around Christmas. Yep. Not always the case 100%. So meaning our temperatures haven't gotten really brutal at that point. That's really generally reserved for our January and beginning of February. So
one thing though that we did talk about next year, what we'll probably do, because like Greg, we learned a lesson too about using Apiguard in our nukes. Our lesson wasn't as painful as Greg's, but still painful. We'll probably, any nukes, we'll just OAV them for their mite treatment from now on. We won't use Apiguard or anything else in nukes.
Hey, Mike Berry, this is not a how to do it. This is how I do, okay? I need you to understand this first.
This isn't the beginner's bee chat, Mike Berry.
Yeah. Some of us don't get that warm weather down there in the south where we don't, we still got brood all winter like they do down there. So
yeah, mine probably never goes completely brood.
I know, right? Must be nice.
I mean, much like Lee. I mean, Lee, Mike, Ricky, you're still further north and you're in the mountains, so you wouldn't know. Spanky's kind of right along there with you, so he's going to see broodless periods. I'm just curious to know if or what your brood, Mike and or anybody else that's that far south, chime in. I would like to know, and I realize this might be kind of a trick question because from year to year that probably changes. At what point in time would you see the least amount of brood in your colonies? And give me an idea of what those patches might look like. Are you just looking like a fist-sized patch on a couple frames or larger than that? I'm guessing you would probably say sometime in January, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
I know that, let's see, what is it? Brad from Cajun Homesteads. In January, they'll have 3 frames of brood.
3?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's still in beginning of January?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. OAV
I asked them about they have 2 weeks worth of like Lee will tell you, 2 weeks worth of winter.
Joey says late December and early January.
There we go. Yeah.
And then Paul says about vacation time. So I guess that means January 2nd this year, right? Right, Paul? Late December, early January here. Okay. Yep.
Mike is saying the same thing.
Yep.
But I do OAV. I mean, I do it November through February. I try to get one in a month, maybe two.
Yeah.
This year I didn't. January I was at Nobby, so that was the only week that was 45 degrees. So I didn't get anything in January, but I got 2 times in February, in the
Mhm.
beginning and right at the end. And then after that I quit.
Wow.
February 8th through 15th. So Jonathan brought up a good point here
Sweet.
earlier. I don't know if anybody caught that. He mentioned something about the Viroxan, which is, I believe, I have not researched it a lot myself, but it's a pad with acylic acid. I don't want to say dribble because that's not the right term to use, but a wet form of salic acid. Again, it escapes me what terminology to use.
It's just an extended release, kind of like the sponges, I guess you'd call it. And
It's a real
little strips, they loop them over the brood, but it seemed like you got to put about 4 of them in let's say a deep box.
I think it was.
It looks like those wafers, and you break them into 4 pieces.
Oh, that's Ape Life Var.
Oh yeah, that's something different.
That one's different. Ape Life Var. Yeah, you're right, Charlie.
Ape Life Var is more thymol.
I looked at that Brox, and if I remember correctly, I think it said to administer it, you wanted to strip to every 2.5 frames.
Yeah.
If I read it correctly and interpreted it correctly.
You're to double.
It's basically the same thing that Randy Oliver
the strip
basically been perfecting, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
And
now it's for sale, so they can make money off of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And say you have to do it this way, otherwise it's illegal.
Exactly.
I would step out on a limb here and say there's going to be a lot of people that'll use that method, but not the approved purchase through the dealer method, right?
Especially when it's, what is it? Like, it's like $80 or $100 for a 60 pack or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you need 2 per box. So a 60 pack and get you 30 hives.
It's quite a bit higher than what the vapor is, I can tell you.
Well, 2.5 frames per strip. So you got what? You got 8 hives or 8 frames in your thing.
So when you say 2.5 frames per strip, is that 2.5 frames of bees or the brood specifically?
I'm not sure about
brood.
Brood?
Is it brood?
Okay.
That's what it said.
Okay.
If I now, don't take my word for it. Everybody read the administration or the administering instructions, but I think it was per 2.5 per frames of brood.
Okay. Yep.
So
yeah, I really have not researched that whatsoever at all. I know very little about it. I know the idea behind it, but
Man Lake cannot ship it to California, Hawaii, Indiana, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, or Washington. So y'all are out of luck.
I'm not sure that Illinois wasn't on that list too.
Not on the Man Lake list. It's not.
Illinois is not on the Man Lake list, so I'm assuming that you're approved.
All right, DC, what's OA gel? Never heard of it. You got dribble. You can still use a dribble thing. You can still use vapor. Then you got extended relief, which usually is the Swedish sponges and all that. You spent $90 on 60 strips.
Yeah, that will be a costly treatment.
Yeah.
They're really capitalizing on that. They must have some debt to pay off with that kind of pricing.
Braxan is recommended for every 2.5 brood frames covered with bees.
It's interesting.
When using medium boxes.
There we go.
Look at that,
folks, right here.
Yeah, it weren't easy. I figured it'd be tomorrow by the time we got on here.
Thankfully, you all are in here. Everybody should know who these 2 beautiful people are. These are like Melissa and I's family right here. I begged Dennis and Melanie earlier. I said, "Would you guys please come on So I didn't know if they were, but here they are.
That's awesome. And if you've been to any of the like Hive Life or the Kentucky convention, you've seen them and probably talked to them. Most of us have.
That's right. I'll tell everybody a quick story. So, and everybody loves my stories. And just for Greg that's on there, this is going to be a short story long, okay? Because that's the way I like to tell them. So the first time I met Dennis and Melanie would have been technically at the second Hive Life. So not the very first one where there was 300. This one would have been the 700 to 800 people. So technically the second one. It would have been all of our firsts. But we had already sat at a table, and there was another couple that was there with us from Missouri. We didn't know them. We just met them there. And trying to think, was there somebody else at the table at the time? I feel like there was.
Wasn't Jamie and Brandy sitting at that table too?
I don't remember if
that
Jamie
was Bill Wart from North Carolina. He was there sitting next to us. Jamie and Brandy came over and talked to us about putting honey in. Remember?
Yeah.
Into the honey swap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was later on. I didn't meet them right away. Jamie and Brandy. And then, so I remember they were walking around, and we had a table that was sitting close to dead center of the stage, but maybe back, I don't know, what would you guys say? Maybe 60 feet or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we had a pretty good seat, and we had some open spots there, and they're kind of wandering around, like, hey, are these seats open? I'm like, absolutely, sit down. And then literally from there, the rest just kind of goes down in the history books from there, because I'll tell you what, you never met a more kind couple of people. And I'll tell you what, everybody makes fun of me for talking. Miss Melanie will talk your ear off too. And I'll tell you what, she has nothing but nice things to say about everybody. Just the kindest person and the kindest people you ever meet. If you don't know them, you should know them. And I'll just tell you what, they've been a blessing ever since. Like I said, they are literally like family to us. We get to go down and visit with them like once a year. And it's just awesome. They just some tremendous people. You never met a nicer couple.
Yeah, we've been kind of sad here lately between Slidell canceling on us. We was counting on seeing you guys there, and then you haven't been to Florida yet this year. So, we think we've maybe got disowned or something.
No, you definitely didn't. I'll tell you what it really was. And I don't like to throw anybody under the bus, but it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's. Somebody is just keeping me entirely too busy trying to, volunteer time, two teenage boys that, they like to get into trouble a little bit, not too bad, but a little bit, managing colonies, trying to earn a living and markets and such. She doesn't give me any free time, Dennis, and I don't know what to do about it.
Well, I think you got the same problem I've got. The 4 or 5 hives of bees you wanted, something happened to that.
They exploded.
Nobody else on this chat has that problem, right? You only wanted like one hive, and now you've got 500 gajillion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crack the whip, Melissa.
Got to keep them busy to keep them out of trouble.
Hey, Lee, I feel like now throw a picture in there if you have it queued up.
Lee, we were telling the story about meeting you the first time we went to Hive Life, that we kept thinking, hey, that guy looks familiar.
Him and Renee with that. What was it?
Cracker Barrel?
Cracker Barrel,
yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
This was a picture I took earlier today that somehow got doctored up a little bit. I'm not sure if y'all can find that there, but, I sent in a really nice picture to a couple fellows, and that's what ended up coming out of it. So I'm not sure how that happened.
Oh, no.
We just all know what Melissa wants to do to you, so we thought, everybody.
I'm all good now.
You healed up quick.
Healed up quickly.
So you met Lee at the Cracker Barrel? Is that what you were saying?
Right.
Yeah. We had watched him on YouTube, but him and Renee were there eating.
We just happened to, they were like the table right in front of us, and we kept like, those guys look familiar.
Now, was he sitting there by himself, or who was he with?
No, he had Renee.
Oh, okay. His better half there. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't actually officially meet Lee until January, whenever he was helping. He had stayed in Ricky's booth the whole time and helped him out. And I never found him on YouTube or anything. I didn't really know much about him, honestly. And then he helped me, and just, again, one of the nicest guys you ever meet, helping get some of my equipment to the.
Apparently,
to the
everybody Tom meets is the nicest person you'll ever meet. I'm just saying.
He just draws that kind of people. he just draws that kind of people. He even found you.
See, exactly what Dennis said. Exactly what Dennis said.
So how are the bees down in North Florida?
Yeah, that's a good question.
They're mostly trying to work me to death. I think I'm, maybe we're kind of to the point of just kind of getting them ready for winter now. But it's been a busy year.
Sumac is just kind of fading out a little bit now, and the
goldenrod hasn't
aster
even
and the
started.
goldenrod should be starting in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much goldenrod around here. Like, it's like just starting to bloom in places. Like, I hear other people in Missouri saying it's blooming by them, but we haven't really noticed much here in our specific area. And that just kind of goes to show you how specific beekeeping really is. People 50 miles from us, or not even that, are seeing goldenrod.
Well,
If it's more than 3,
yeah. Go ahead.
there might be something you're not.
What'd you say, Dennis? You kind of cut out.
I said if it's more than 3 miles, the bees there may be getting something that yours aren't. It's so location specific. One guy just asked where we were from, and we're right on the Georgia-Florida line, south edge of the Open Oak Swamp is the best way to put it.
Yeah, they're just west of Jacksonville by a couple hours.
About 50 minutes.
About an hour. We're 50 miles northwest of Jacksonville, right on the Georgia line.
There's a lot of timber out there, isn't there, Dennis?
A lot of timber, a lot of water, and a lot of snakes.
Yeah. They live right on a creek called Moccasin Creek, and I'm like, hey, why do they call it that? And he's like, you really want to know? And I'm like, nope.
Well, when I was a kid, if you went down to that creek, you couldn't walk 3 feet without finding another one. But back when I was young, they were still poaching gators. Now the gators are more protected, and there's an abundance of them, and their favorite meal is snake. So there's not as many snakes as there used to be. We still get our share.
Yeah. At least you can see. You can see a gator.
And you play with gators.
Say that again, Melanie.
I said the only place you can go on vacation and your kids can play with gators.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. I'm sure if my boys would have been left unattended for a little bit, you'd have seen them in the pond trying to get bit.
They were pretty darn close.
They were really close to that.
Yeah. We don't get to see them here in St. Louis. We don't have those reptiles up here.
Not supposed to anyway.
That's right. Yeah, if we do, there's a problem.
So the Ziploc bag method, I had never seen anybody use that method until last year. One of the guys that we teach the Great Plains Master Beekeeping program with, that's the method he used. I'd never heard about it before. I'm like, that's a really good trick there.
It's a great idea. Yeah, the method. I mean, use Ziploc bag. Absolutely. I mean, it's an inexpensive way to do it as long as you have the shim to put in there. Phenomenal way.
And Matthew talks about using Ziploc.
I'm gonna try something new. I haven't.
Guilty. Guilty. I've tried everything over the years.
Charlie, have you ever tried that Ziploc bag method?
No. I'm always
Looks
good
like quite a few good people in the chat have.
top 5 here.
You want to be careful with it, not touch it or squash it in any way. You'll have sweet honeys, bees.
I mean, that's
Mhm.
like Hive Life coming out with that basically the same concept when we manufactured. I'm like, why would anybody buy that? You can do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a new product that Hive Alive has been. I seen them promote a little bit. Is they have those bags that have already that mixture already in them. Which I mean, for somebody who's looking for a convenient way to feed and they don't want any of the guesswork or calculations, you know what? That's a great way. Be a great method. It'd be a little more costly for somebody with any amount of hives, though, of course.
I don't suggest that method to anyone that their wife does the bookkeeping like mine does, because I'm always getting chewed for spending too much.
There's a lot of things with bees that are that way.
Look at there.
Look at this guy.
He's been trying to sneak his pie on us, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Huh? Is this the day, Spank?
Yeah, what's up, Spanky?
It's done passed.
Mm.
I'll tell you what, if you had a piece of that birthday cake, I'd take it right now. It looked pretty darn good.
Old tapeworm's kicking in again.
I haven't eaten dinner yet, JW. What did I eat for lunch?
We had pizza.
Oh, we had pizza.
Oh,
We had pizza for lunch.
Done gave him
Buddy
brain
mine,
damage.
mine came by and brought us pizza. But I am hungry if you are asking, JW. I feel like we need to start a song of happy birthday for Spanky here.
Oh man, you guys don't want me singing. It'll be better.
Well, happy birthday anyway, Spanky.
Thank
Yes.
Hope it was a good one for you.
Absolutely.
Good. I'll tell you what. If you
How
had
many, Spank? What are you, about 65, 66, 67?
I'm getting there.
Huh? Well, you're not going to tell us?
Well, you asked if I was that age. I said I was getting there. I answered your question.
yeah. So Steve Amos says, "Don't be scared. Just don't make the holes too big."
Yeah.
The guy that we did just takes a razor blade and just does a little slit in
Yeah.
the top. He doesn't put like actual holes in it.
If
just
you
a
use
slit.
an extremely sharp razor blade, it'll pierce that and cut it without even leaving a depression inside that bag.
I bet.
Yeah, works well.
I heard the pull tab zipper bags leak a lot. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use those. I would use the regular zip top ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Old school ones.
So, Dennis, have you guys had to feed anything of your colonies, or you had enough flow going on to keep them built up?
There's just like 5 or 6 small colonies that got a late start this year that I'm kind of babying them along. But we get kind of a trickle, and I left quite a bit of honey on when I pulled honey. Our main flow is done normally about the last week of May. So about the time it gets good and hot, we're pulling honey.
Yeah.
I'm
Now,
gonna
were you
try
guys-
something
Go
this
ahead.
winter with feeding this winter. I'm gonna try something different. On one of the forums somewhere, a commercial guy was talking about the fondant, and he uses like a regular baker's fondant, which is the same thing, but just doesn't have the high lot
Nutrients,
stuff
whatever,
in it.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm gonna try that. I actually got some supposed to be here tomorrow, the next day. You can buy a 50-pound block of it for like $40-something.
Oh,
So it's a
wow.
lot cheaper.
Yeah.
I had
And-
some big difference in colonies coming out of winter by putting it on them like somewhere around January.
Yep. Now, did you all add anything to that? Any micronutrient or anything?
No, I'm gonna try it just straight. See what
Okay.
they do.
Yeah.
Of course, this year's the first year I've ever seen it, and I thought maybe I was just thinking it and weren't really seeing it. And Bob Benny said the bees he brought to South Georgia did the same thing. I actually seen some buildup of nectar from the red maples this year,
Really?
and that's usually by the second week of January they're blooming.
Wow.
So by the end of January, 1st of February, you're starting to see swarm cells usually.
Yeah, I remember when we would leave Nabi, you all were talking about, we need to head back and start managing the bees. And I'm like, managing the bees, we're still in dead winter. At that point, we don't have to do anything. And you all are talking about swarm management techniques and such. I'm like, holy cow, that's the early start to the season.
Yeah, that's a good post there from Greg Burns.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff can give you the trots a little bit, or give your bees the trots.
Oh yeah. Well, the only good thing about that is here, it's not like they can't fly, because just about every day it's warm enough they can fly.
Yeah.
Yep, that'll make a little bit of a difference for sure. So does anybody have any honey left to pull in any colonies right now, or has everyone got all that taken care of at this point?
I'm done for the year myself.
Me too. Ricky, you got more to do?
I've got all my honey pulled, but sometimes certain places, not here at my place, but there are other places that the goldenrod can come in real heavy, and you can get a little bit of a goldenrod flow. So I leave those supers on. If I get it, it's good. If I don't, then I don't worry about it. So
yeah. Yeah, we don't really typically get that. It's just usually a little bit too dry for us here. I mean, this year might be a little bit different. We've had a lot more wet weather and precipitation than we've had in years past. But I will say this week got up pretty warm, and it's been dry for about a week and a half. And like I said, it was about mid-90s a few different days here, and that'll tend to dry things out very quickly. So I don't know. We're supposed to get some rain over the weekend. We'll see if that comes to fruition and how much we actually get. But I don't know. There's still a good possibility that when our goldenrod does bloom, which it should probably be coming up close to any time now, because when we were at the Missouri State Fair 2 weeks ago, and one morning I got up early and was looking out across the lake out there where the gentleman's lake house we were staying at, and a little bit south of Sedalia, which is basically out in middle Missouri for anybody that would know kind of where that's at. I seen yellow blooming probably about 100 yards out, and I'm asking him, like, that sure looks like goldenrod. Tell me I'm wrong. He said, no, it's goldenrod. And it was just starting to bloom then about 2 weeks ago. But of all the goldenrod we have up here, I have not seen any of it blooming yet. But I believe we're probably on the cusp of that, if I had to guess. Everything seems like it's a little bit earlier this year. I don't know if everybody's experiencing the same thing, but around us anyway, everything's seemed to be moved up. It seems like maybe a week or two.
There's about 5 or 6 subspecies of goldenrod. And this patch of ground that you see, that's the bottom ground that I own. That I've gotten trees.
Yeah.
And there's goldenrod blooming down there, but it's completely different species.
Okay.
Than the different. I've got 2 different subspecies, I guess you would say, of goldenrod up on the prairie where my bees are, and it's not blooming yet.
Yeah.
I asked Greg about apricot. I heard that he had a major malfunction. I was curious about that.
Come on over here, Greg, and tell us about it. We don't mind.
Yeah, let's hear about it. Let's hear about the losses.
Yeah, his malfunction was similar to ours, but on a grander scale.
Yeah.
Much grander scale.
But you know what? As long as you learn something from that lesson, it's not a complete loss, though. So I don't always view a failure as a failure, even though I'm going to beat myself up about it regardless. But as long as I'm able to learn something, or maybe
there's a native flower.
You may get a black eye because of it. You don't. You just never know around here.
Whatever.
I got to keep them in line somehow. I'm just saying.
Dennis, you don't have to worry about Melanie hitting you, do you?
No, she's pretty calm. She can put up with me better than this anyway. Sometimes better than I can put up with myself.
Ah, look at that. Boy, that's a beauty right there.
That is a pretty one.
Anybody take a shiner like that and keep a smile on their face? I'm telling you what. You know?
Yep.
Got some brain damage.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Hey, Tom,
Yes, sir.
How
that
far are you off?
kind of
Go ahead. Go ahead.
that kind of fits with what I told a fellow one time. That shiner is you got to learn to say yes, ma'am, with the proper tone of voice.
So what you're saying is no sarcasm?
It doesn't pan out well.
Okay, that'd probably be difficult for me. I was the kid growing up when my mom said, "Hey, you see that pan up there with hot oil?" And I'm like, "Yep, don't touch it." As I'm looking at her, I'm pulling it down. That was me. You know, I was learning the hard way, I guess.
Changing the subject, Dennis, how far are you off from Kingsland? Couldn't be too far, are you? Kingsland, Georgia?
Kingsland is almost a straight shot east from us. About 50 miles,
Okay.
give or take a little, through the woods. We're so close to Georgia coming out of Jacksonville the way we normally go. We go through 13 miles of Georgia to get back to where we live in Florida.
Yeah.
That's
I know that area pretty well. I've got some interest down there myself.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow. On one of the properties that we have, you can just walk about a half a mile through the woods and you're actually on Georgia land.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Yeah, I
be
had a
about half
son
a mile.
stationed there at Kings Bay for 4 years. There at that nuclear
Oh, wow.
sub base. There
Uh-huh.
at Kings.
You know
So he
where
left.
Folkestone, Georgia is?
Oh, yes, sir. Uh-huh.
We go through Folkestone to get to Kingsland, but it's like a little bit of a zigzag, but yeah, it's about parallel with us.
No, Wilbanks, they're about straight north of you then, right? You know, are you familiar with those folks? They're at Claxton?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's almost straight north.
Right.
That's what I figured.
Of course, there's no such thing as straight north unless you're flying because the swamp's in the way. But
Yeah.
go around through Folkestone and go north out of there.
so the one like cool thing about where Melanie and Dennis live, one of the properties that they have is actually the property that Dennis grew up on, right, Dennis? Like that's been in your family forever.
Yeah. 1914. Dad moved there in 1914. He was 3 weeks old.
Holy cow. Yeah. It's a pretty good piece of property, though.
Well, it's home. I like it anyway.
What were those?
Works me
Were those
today.
folks, when you go straight back off the farmhouse, about maybe 200 yards back in there before you get to where the original home was at, or the original that trailer was sitting back there, there's those group of those real large trees with that that moss that grows on it. I forget what that's called. Yeah. What type of trees are those?
Cypress.
Cypress. Okay.
That's basically a small cypress pond that over the years has just all been cleaned out underneath to where it don't really look like a pond except when it rains a lot.
Yeah. That was a really cool picture, getting a couple of pictures when me, Melissa, and the kids were out there. You know, just with that moss hanging off the trees and stuff kind of looks, we don't have that where we're at. We have the cypress, but we don't have the
we don't have the cool hanging moss.
We don't have the cool moss and all.
So I have a question for you guys. So I don't remember if it was earlier this spring or last year. You sent us those pictures of that other beekeeper that's near your property that dropped off those hives that are in those boxes. Are those still there?
Yeah.
The BY's boxes.
Yeah. Did you get? Can you tell everybody about those? Because probably nobody knows what those are, may not know what they are, have really seen them before.
Those were really cool.
Well, yeah, it's AI and robotics combined, but I never got to actually take part in any of that, even though he didn't bring bees in at the farm. I told him I've got enough bees there to keep up with now, but I didn't get to really see the inside of them and how they work, but it's not something I would want to do, but it was very interesting. I do know, because I had heard just grapevine talk that it'll even help control the swarming issues. And if so, it's kind of failing on that, because at my nephew's, I got 2 swarms out of them. Yeah, that's just the ones I stumbled across. But that's out of Israel. They raised like $120 million right to start with towards all the research. It's been going on for quite some time. I'm hope not, but I'm afraid there might be more bad than good come out of it. But
Yeah.
Did anybody see that video that Umberto did talking about people coming in and buying out the beehives this past week?
Yeah, I heard something about that. Go ahead and explain it, Melanie, what you know about it.
Well, he didn't really explain it enough for me to totally understand anyway. But I have to wonder if it might even be some of that's involved. But they were talking about they coming in and making offers to beekeepers and basically like buying their colonies, commercial guys, and then they have a job with them, but it's people from out of the country that's trying to kind of take over a lot of the industry, evidently.
Yeah, and he was talking about it basically being an agricultural weapon, because they were saying that if they come in and buy up the majority of the bees, then they are basically controlling our food, and but he's like Dennis said, he really didn't go into a lot of detail. I think he knows more than he's telling so far. But if y'all don't watch him, it's Inside the Hive on YouTube, and he's really good. He worked down there with Jamie Ellis at the University of Florida, and he does some excellent videos. But like I said, that's his last video that he just put up this past week, and it's really interesting.
I think now he's mainly a consultant for commercial beekeepers.
Yeah.
Umberto, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've had heard on X, and heard them talking about it just a little bit about buying the bees out, and we can't pollinate our food, and that would be a way to collapse the economy for us. So it's kind of scary to think about. We kind of take bees for granted, but I mean, that's possible, right? I mean, it definitely could happen. It's just amazing for someone to think outside the box and try something like that. That's kind of scary in a way. So. Uh-oh, Mr. Greg Burns is on here.
Now none of us are going to be able to talk because you got Greg and you got Tom.
It's over with.
So
Greg and Tom
everybody else just sit back and.
Well, all right, Charlie, get after Greg and ask him them questions.
Yeah, I don't want to hijack your. By the way, you guys are doing a great job. I don't want to hijack your chat tonight, but this Apigard and overdosing of nukes and formic. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you use. There is so much nuance with each product that there is no fine print. The fine print is, ask me how I know. And each year it's always a little different. And we always find ourselves kind of scrambling a little bit to see, okay, what are we going to do this year? And so you kind of have to get good at killing bees, doing things, working outside of the lines there before you say, hey, I can get by with this and I can't get by with that. It's been a weird year because OA is solid. It always is. We have found what the threshold of damage and destruction with oxalic acid is. No one in the right mind is going to do that. But Formic typically is one that we really shy away from. This year, it's been an absolute rock star. And I don't know that I'm going to probably use any Apigard this year. It's just, it's weird and goofy. But anyways, Charlie, what exactly was your question?
Well, now, were you only using Apigard in nukes or thin flame hives and stuff like that? I mean, I heard that obviously there was a disaster using it several years ago or whatever.
You ever had one of those years where everything's going right, and we had a specific queen yard and nuke yard? We pulled just a gobs of nukes out of there,
right?
And pulled nukes out. Actually, pulled 2 rounds of nukes out of there, and then pulled 2, maybe 3 rounds of queen. So we're getting towards the end of the season, and everything's now ready for winter. They've had all these brood breaks. They were looking pretty good on mites, but we kind of got late in the year, did some washes, and they're starting to get up there pretty good. They're getting up to that 2% threshold. I'm like, okay, well, when you're sitting on 120 or 140 nukes, whether they're five framers or 5/5s, you're thinking, man, I got these bees this far. They already turned profit, 2 to 4 times. Like, I'm way in the black. And it's not that we got greedy or got too proud of ourselves, because we always keep it real and keep it humble, and just, you never really know. You just trust. Anyways, so here you are setting yourself up thinking, man, in the springtime, if these 120 nukes here that we have just set to the side just for spring, we could sell them as overwintered nukes, or we could double down and really build them up. And, out of that 120, if 100 of them make it, they're going to need split. They're going to need busted up. There's 250, 300 nukes to pull out of there. That times the price of whatever you're thinking for nukes. You start to plan for fence and fence post and this piece of equipment and all these kind of things, right? But my wife, she is very much a reminder. Do not
count your chickens before they
before it
hatch.
hatches. That's exactly it, right? So here we are. We're doing all the right things. We're going to finish strong. This particular year, we were in the month of we're actually a couple weeks further than when we are right now. We were about mid to late September, and the weather was cool. We had 70s, low 70s, right? It's like you can hardly do no wrong, right? But we had cat brood. The bees were brooding back up again. And one of these little warm spells that kind of happened. Anyways, so we go through, and here's what I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, especially with Apigard. And if Tom doesn't get on for a short story long, and you want to hear some deep,
he's here. He's
hiding.
He's putting food in his face.
What's that, Captain Crunch? You going all in tonight, Tom? You cooking dinner?
It's roast potatoes and carrots.
Oh, so crunch berries, in other words. Okay. Nice.
There, you can see his elbow. He's here.
I'm listening to the whole thing. Fire away.
I think Greg just froze.
Oh, he froze up. He sure did. Yep.
Some kind of, I don't want to say inside info on Formic, but there is a nearly bulletproof way that we have found with that. Anyways, back to Apigard. Most folks, listening tonight, if you're ordering Apigard, for the most part, I don't know all the details. I know a lot of you raise quite a few colonies, so this might be too small of a container. But for a lot of folks who've got 20 hives or less, typically you're going to go for this format of Apigard. And if you go with this format of Apigard, you've got 50 grams in a 1 foil dose. You need about maybe up to 2 of those. Here's the thing. Here's the instructions. And when you're looking at the instructions for Apigard, you get into there, right? And there's a lot of, okay, where is it at? Where's the instructions? Mm-hmm. Let me grab my cheaters here. Just a little side note. I'm really honored to be on here tonight with all these follically challenged gentlemen too. It feels like we're in good company here. But when you get into some of these instructions here on Apigard, it gets, the devil's in the details, and I really mean that. There's no information on nukes at all.
No, there's not. I searched. Yeah.
There's 0. Okay. And then when you try to go to their website, it's really hard to navigate that to actually pull information for USA. All right. So when you're getting into this, right, and you see, oh, the product, you've got a range of 50 to 105 for the most part. And then, then there's this little like in passing, at temperatures above 77, a lower dose consisting of half the contents, half the tray, can be used effectively at these higher temperatures. Only one application of approximately 25 grams should be applied at any one time. To use half of the dose, here's where this gets weird. Long story short, it tells you to cut this thing in half with scissors. I mean, you guys know how messy this is? Like, cut this in half. I'm going to see you guys cut this in half with scissors and keep 25 grams on either side. I mean, you're getting into losing anywhere from 5 to 7 grams easily on each side just from cut. So I'm thinking, what? Who in the right mind is going to do that? And then, of course, it says put it on top of a brood box that you need a 1/4 inch of space above this for the bee. I'm thinking, you can't, how do you? You're not going to slip this between your boxes. How are they going to get in there? How are they going to get on? And so you do what most folks do is they put it on top. Okay. If that's not bad enough, okay, so that's the foil. That's the foil ones. This stuff works great. But what we recommend to our customers and when we use this in the learning yard or where this works great, this can work in the horizontals. But what we found best in the horizontals is because we're using things on bigger scale, we're using tubs of this stuff. You guys know what this is. It does about 30 colonies per tub, right? And so when you get into reading this stuff, look at the print on this, right? You're going through there, right? And you whether you need them or not, you almost got to put your cheaters on and take a look at this. But here's what I wanted to talk about here. And Charlie, I'm getting to it. Tom, this is short story long, but the devil's in the details, and the details are really, really important when it comes to these things because no one knows these things. No one can find this information. And you don't figure this out until you just killed or you just ran out 120 nukes that someone do the math, 120, let's say out of the 120, 100 of them made it. If 100 of them made it, that would have easily made 200 nukes. We sell nukes for 220 a piece. You do the math. So this is a very painful. Ask me how I know. Anyways, so on the bucket, there's more detailed nuance, right? At temperatures above 77, a lower dosage of Apigard can be used effectively. It doesn't say at temps above 77, you should consider using a lower dose. It doesn't say at temps above 77, you should use a lower dose. It says at temps above 77, a lower dosage of 25 mil or 25 grams can be used effectively. I'm thinking, what does that mean? Can be used effectively. Okay. Or what are we getting into? All right. And then you read on and it says at these higher temps, I'm thinking at these higher temps, we're talking about 77 Fahrenheit. What do you mean at these higher temps? When it said the high temp threshold on the instructions is 105. So now they're saying at higher temps of 77 Fahrenheit. I'm thinking, okay, this is a problem. All right, so at these higher temps, only one application of 25 to 26 milliliters should be applied at any one time. Okay, right, and then it goes on and says repeat dose applications may be applied at intervals of 1 to 2 weeks as needed for up to 4 applications. When mite infestations persist, remove any Apigard gel, Here's the gold. If that wasn't confusing enough, 1 to 2 weeks, up to 4 applications at higher temperatures at 77, you're thinking, what is going on? Brian, this is a painful pulpit. The pulpit of pain is where I'm at with this. Here's this little tiny paragraph no one's ever read. No one's ever heard of. No one has, you guys mentioned it earlier. And this is where even this will cause you problems. Here we go. Small and wintering bee colonies and nuclei require only one dose of 12 to 13 milliliters, approximately 12.5 grams, up to 25 to 26 milliliters of Apogard gel, depending on the colony or nucleus size. Doesn't say what the details are on that. Okay, that's a problem. Left in place, the product disappears from the tray using the dosage syringe as described above to administer required dose of Apogard gel. They very handy say there's an overdose clause here. The use of a dose higher than 51 milliliters of Apogard per app could cause disturbances in the behavior of the colony, agitation, absconding, increased mortality. In case of an overdose, remove the excess product from the colony. What?
If it overdosed, the damage was already done.
You might as well leave it in there. So yeah, that was a lot of info. Here's the thing. So we did that, and I mean, we measured this thing out. What we actually did is we tried to even put a formula together where if this is saying a 50 gram dose is suitable for maybe a 10 frame single or so, we're thinking, okay, you do the math. Maybe it's 5 grams per brood frame, and you do the math and you say, okay, if that's the case, then maybe that's why they say up to like a 5 frame nuke could go maybe up to 25 grams. And I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know. That seems like an awful lot. So what happened? That's what we did. We're measuring out 12, and we were on the low side. Okay. Now back then we did our boxes completely different, and this is where this gets even worse. But wait, there's more. Back then, we would actually drill out the front and the back of every single box, and we would have a 3/4 inch hole. This is where it matters: a 3/4 inch hole on the front and a 3/4 inch hole, or actually 1 inch hole on the back, screened with hardware cloth. You guys have seen it a million times, right? So if you do the math, one of you guys are way smarter than me. Try to figure out what the square inch of 2 1-inch circles is, okay? And try to figure out what that square inch, how much ventilation would be going in through a colony versus what? There's no information on standard bottom board sizes, entrances. There's none of that. And that's where it matters, because we lost every single, not all of those colonies, we lost them all. The worst ones, believe it or not, were actually the 5/5. For whatever reason, they were the absolute worst. So why did that fail? The temperatures were cool. There was the type of ventilation that we had. Even on a 5 frame nuke box, you're talking on average, what, 5 inches by 3/4 inches at the most for ventilation across something like that. So where does this go bad? Ventilation. You guys were talking earlier about how humidity plays into that. I'm not saying humidity is not important, but ventilation is the most important, because when bees, obviously they don't breathe like we do with lungs. So I think the humidity does matter, but I think the ventilation is the big factor. So, okay, Lee is smart. So 4.3825 in per 4.3
cubic
maybe
inches.
it's 0.43 square inches per 1 inch circle. So we lost them all. We even dialed it down on the absolute smallest dose. Here's what happened. Nearly every single one of them absconded. There were some that were just flat out like they were in just absolute shock overload. Some of them were so agitated and so fiery, they were ugly. Eventually they hit the trees, all of them. Now where'd those bees go? Maybe let's pretend they found a nice warm cozy place in a barn somewhere and they overwintered perfectly, and next year I get one of those swarms. I don't think so. I think they all kicked the bucket. And that was a really hard lesson learned, because even if you do all the things right according to the best instructions at the time, those instructions are seriously flawed. And that's the problem when you're trying to put those products on. There is so much nuance to all those. Where OA, I mean, what we found, the threshold for OA is 15 grams of OA for 1 frame of bees. That was the threshold where we had damage. No one in the right mind is going to do that. So, Charlie, that's so what do you do with nukes? What do you do with nukes that are late fall in the 70s? They're starting to shrink down on brood. By every stretch of the imagination, one would say that actually sounds pretty ideal. If you were going to put it on, You would put it on at the end of that season once the winter bees have already starting to hatch. You're not going to have a queen that's shutting down and sacrificing winter, like everything's squared away. Put it on, gut cleanup, mite cleanup. I mean, that sounds picture perfect. That was a hard one. That was an absolute hard one. And then you fast forward to this year with Formic, because Tom Nolan came out to the farm and we walked through and showed me some of the nuances with how to put this on. I just drove past all to this coming Monday is 14 days. And out of all the colonies that we put them on, there is one abscond, and I actually watched it abscond as I'm driving through there yesterday, and that was one that I installed out of bounds, and it was 6 frames of bees that I put one pad on just to see, can I get by with one pad on 6 bees? Guess what? I couldn't do it. Absolutely everything else that got 2 pads, or stronger colonies that got 1 pad, they are all out front, flying in and out. Everything looks beautiful. But what we learned with that, most of what we are using is 4-way pallets. And so we only have about a 5-inch entrance on each colony, right? We don't overwinter with, there's no wraps, there's no extra ventilation, there's absolutely nothing. They're waxed it boxes, migratory lid on top, and that's it. And they do really good. So there's no extra ventilation even with the Formic. But what we learned is if you just put an extra super on top with frames, when you put your Formic on, that little extra headspace makes all the difference in the world. And so now for us, now the bees are all cleaned up, all their mites are gone. And guess what is starting to hit right now? The actual second round of goldenrod is just starting to bloom. So here in the next 7 to 10 days, they're going to be packing it in right after all of the treatment, right when she's ready to kick back in and really start to lay it up hot and heavy. So this year, Formic was like, holy smokes, it was extremely ideal. So anyways, that's my painful pulpit.
Well, it sounds like you're coming into a pretty ideal time, because now that they'll be stimulated a little bit for brood rearing, now that they're having that incoming nectar.
Yeah.
They've already been cleaned up ideally, and you're going to be setting them up for the winter bee production and keeping a healthy colony. It also sounds like to me that when you kind of read it out loud, I never really took this in, but when you're reading it out loud to me, I feel like this was written by an attorney who knows nothing about bees. And they said, this is what our data looks like, but we're not entirely sure. How do we word this that we get around any type of
liability?
And he said, leave it to me. I'll take care of it.
Yep.
Well,
And that's what you get.
It just all seems very inconsistent from what's written in the pamphlet you get, what's written on the container, and what's, there's no continuity between any of it.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I get is I'll say something about it and go, oh, look, it's good up to 105 degrees. I'm like, think about it, bud. It's like, no.
Yeah, any thymol product, all the thymol products, doesn't matter if it has thymol in it, you still have to be careful with your temps. You have to.
You also have to be careful not to rub it in your eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a good time, isn't it?
I always get it on my face somehow.
Yeah.
I'm wearing gloves, but you're sweaty because it's the middle of summer. You're sweaty. You touch something. You're like, oh, that burns so bad.
So, Greg, you put, let's say 12 or maybe a little bit less grams on those nukes, and they were just 5 frames?
Well, 5s, and then on the 5 over 5s, they might have got 14 grams. We've just gave them just a little bit extra. And of course, that's all on the card. And
even with 70-degree weather,
yep,
they still killed your bees.
Yep, and that was a 3/4. That was a 3/4 shim on top with a migratory lid. Yep.
So your temperature.
I mean, that's what I've been mining information, and it's like I haven't figured out any way of using this product safely.
You know what the truth is? You have to kill your bees with the product first to say, okay, I definitely can't do this. Yeah. And then you have to back off and say, okay, I can get by with this. And then there's your baseline. That's the hard truth.
Yeah.
Greg, I'll tell you what I've done. I put on 35-gram doses on my 8 and 10 frame hives. Yeah. And I administered 3 a week apart.
3.
And I didn't, and I did 3 applications.
Is that 100 grams?
Sir?
Is that about 100 grams you put on total then?
90, you know.
Yeah.
And I never done anything extra. Only I used 1.5 inch shims on the top. I never opened up, any additional.
Yeah, that's funny.
We had a real low mite numbers that spring.
Yeah. Just curious, how were the bee numbers that spring?
That was it took us a little while. It took us a while to get built back up, for sure. But
well, I didn't have the exact same luck you did. I only lost 8 that were in 5, and then I had some that were 5/5. That 2 of those I think were 5/5, or 3 of them were 5/5s, and these colonies were fine. There was nothing wrong with them. They had the brood patterns were great, new queens, just a typical nice growing nucleus colony. And again, 2 of these were knocked out. Now I cannot say there was any of my double deeps, because we run 8-frame double deeps. And then when we put that on, rather than me putting a shim on, I throw an extra deep box with empty foundations on there, so that any additional bees can maybe draw me out some comb. And I slide it right in between the top of the second box, in between the lower part of the third, and I give them a little bit extra space. So they have space, a slight bit of ventilation, or a little bit extra wiggle room in there, and then their 50-gram dose. And I didn't have any colonies absconding from that, but my nukes were a different story. Yeah. So yes, you're absolutely right. I am not going to do that again next year. My initial thought was bumping it down to the 12 grams, but you're telling me something different here that I still don't like to hear. So I'm not sure at this point, to be honest with you.
I think you got to read the frames, read the brood, put the time into the washes and see where you're looking at. If you can cruise, if you're at like 1 and 1.5%, there are better ways to get thymol to the bees, I think, than just Apogard. If you're using it for a gut cleanse, what's really interesting with thymol is there's not we understand that it works. We've some of these products are, no matter which way you cut it, they're expensive. Mm-hmm. Even for the number of hives that we run, and even though we're distributors for Hive Alive, it's still expensive. However, I got into the mindset when I said, okay, you either think of this as I can't afford to put this product on, or I can't afford not to put this product on. And the results that we've seen, it put us in the category as I can't afford not to. Trying to understand what it is that it's doing gets to be a little bit tricky, but we had Dara Scott on for an interview, the main dude with Hive Alive, and we kind of got into the weeds a little bit on how these products actually work. Thymol is really, really important, and there is a short-term gain, but more important, there's a long-term gain with the thymol and with the seaweed that a lot of folks don't recognize, understand, or even know about. So if you're uncomfortable using Apogard or anything with a very, very strong thymolated, I don't want to say off gas, but then you might consider just making sure everything gets a gallon of syrup that's got a good Hive Alive mix in it. Mm-hmm. Pollen patty, the fondant. What we have found is nearly every season we've got a Hive Alive product on there. And what's interesting about that is I don't want to, I hate to really say that is doing something for the mites, because then it says if that is doing something if that's interfering with mite reproduction, then if I take it away, what happens? Because I don't want to be put on a crutch. But if they are saying, for instance, there is some info, and I'll get off my soapbox. You guys can get back to your chat. But I've got an interview here with Marla Spivak and Dr. Mike Simone Finstrom from the USDA Baton Rouge lab. And when I was interviewing and talking with them about just propolis, for instance, the presence of propolis inside of a tree or inside of a colony, they have actually found that it's causing fertility issues inside of the hive, not with the honeybee, but with the varroa mites. So if there are scent or pheromone interrupters inside the colony, even from something like propolis, what they're also finding is that thymol is doing the same thing, is interrupting and causing fertility issues with the mites. Now, you got to be careful, because it's not like bigger the glob, better the job. but it's something to be mindful that we're putting those products in at the right time of year, or at times of year where we can have a force multiplier in something like feed, or in the fondant, or in the pollen patty. So I think it's going to be an important part of a lot of beekeeping moving forward, but it's also scary because if you're just going based on the instructions that you have here on these little foil packs, it's hard to read. I mean, when you go back, you know how many times I've read this bucket? I mean, probably 75 times. And I'm telling you, every time I go out, I read the bucket. Every single year, I read the bucket because I feel like the phrasing's different. Where it's at on the bucket's a little bit different. And I always feel like it's just this game of gotcha. And I'm thinking, okay, if I don't figure out exactly what they are saying, then I'm going to get gotcha'd again.
Yeah.
But that's the reality we're living in. So
yeah, unfortunately.
So, Greg, when you add that thymol, do you put it in the center of the hive? Do you set it towards the back? Because I used to put my thymol towards the back at the brood nest area, so that they really have to track that out. Is that common for you? Is that what you try to do, or what?
Boy, you're gonna get me in trouble, Ricky. Let's just say I do things that work for us. And I'm not saying any of you or your fine listeners should do this, but what I'm saying that I do is in the fall is typically when we're using Apogard. Okay. At the end of the season, if I'm also putting on weight and need to feed, it's kind of a known no-no not to feed with Apogard on. And you try to understand and differentiate, well, why not? Like, okay, so why wouldn't you? Well, because that's what the instructions said, or that's what somebody said, or it's like, okay, well, the big thing is that, and you guys, if you guys know, tell me, but as best as I understand, you don't want the bees to be preoccupied with gorging or feeding and then ignoring the Apogard card on top. So here's what Hillbilly Greg does is, you guys know I'm a big fan of bucket feeders. So what does my orientation look like? All my lids we have cut with the plugs that we sell in the shop. So the bucket is on top. It's in trickle feed mode. It's a 3-to-1. It's Pro Sweet with Hive Alive in it, right in the center of the colony. And then my card is offset just a little bit because I don't want the feed to drip and get and just thin out the Apogard gel. So they're kind of offset in the colony, where the Apogard's either to the front or to the back, and the bucket's right in the middle. I'm just saying that works for me. And it does two jobs at the same time. And because of that, they have to go all the way to the top. And then our lids that we build have that feeding shim already built in it. So I don't need any extra shims or anything. It's just, it just lives in that space that already exists. What they do is they drag that stuff out. But some of our Caucasians, they're propolis monsters. And so they will absolutely just glue. I mean, they will we've had sometimes where they'll cover the entire card in propolis, and you're looking at that and you're thinking, what in the world? So Ricky, that's the orientation that I use, is on the top, very top, and just offset from my feed. And that seems to work.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything that you've talked about, because, we're backyard beekeepers, and, for us to lease just a few colonies is a lot, also. So,
That's right.
I know my buddy, when he lost his 4 out of his 5 colonies, he was pretty upset.
Oh, sure.
About losing those with formic acid. So anything we can put out there to help others is priceless, really, if you start thinking
Absolutely.
about it.
Yeah, being able to share that amongst each other here is really important, because if you think about it, Greg, like you said, if I'm a new beginner beekeeper and somebody says, got to use Apogard, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to go grab. And I look at the label and I say, oh, well, it's 100 degrees in St. Louis. Well, I can work up to 105. No problem, right? And I slap it on there, and now my double deep colony is flying off for the trees like, yep, not going to do this. So, where am I at that point in time? Nobody's liable because you can't understand the verbiage that's on there,
Right.
I mean,
and what does the verbiage mean? Like you said, that's legalese that's in there to keep their rear ends protected. At the end of the day, they're anyways, I've got so much to say on that, and especially with the mite resistance thing that picked up all of a sudden the same spring, that thousands and thousands and thousands of colonies all of a sudden were dying because of Apivar resistance all of a sudden in the same winter period. I mean, don't even get me started. I'm not going to put the tinfoil hat on, but the hard part is Beginning keepers, they don't know where to go. They don't know what this information is. And here's the worst part about it. I'm glad this is on your chat and not mine tonight, Rick. And so you guys, shadow band. It's not. It's. I want to apologize in advance.
Well, Bruce would have you shut off by now.
Exactly. We had a local inspector, 1 county away from here, spoke at a club meeting, told the entire audience that using oxalic acid with supers is illegal. And if he finds out that you've used oxalic acid with your supers on, he will turn you in. So as you can imagine, the phone was just ringing off the hook because folks are thinking, you said this and you guys say this, and now this guy said that, and I said, whoa, okay, say what? Verified it, talked to a few more people, and sure enough, that was unfortunately. This inspector is the information that he's using is many, many years old. And unfortunately, Ohio State's website is also a little prehistoric. And so even though label is the law and everybody knows that, there is so much bad and misinformation that gets put out there, and people are scrambling. People like, God bless her heart, a little old lady. I mean, she's not as old as JW, so she's probably only 80. But I'm just kidding, JW. Or am I?
Shots fired.
Shots fired across the bow. She's scared, right? Because she's trying to keep her bees alive, and she hasn't had the best luck at doing it. She's got financial limitations, all these things. What she heard at the meeting is she needed to come to our shop and spend $458 on an oxalic acid vaporizer.
Wow.
To treat these bees, even when they had brood, that it was the best choice. But don't you dare do it with your supers on. And she's trying to figure out how she's going to afford it. And I said, ma'am, if you have time, take photos of your colony, bring them out to the shop, and let's look at it. Let's figure out exactly what's going on. Because I said, ma'am, there's no way I can take your money for that tool, because that is not the right equipment for you right now. There's way more cost-effective ways to do this. That is a more appropriate treatment. And no, you're not going to go to jail. And it's just, anyways, I'm going to stop on that, because when folks like that are getting bad information and they're literally trying to figure out, am I buying milk and bread, or am I going to buy the thing to take care of my bees?
Yeah.
I get fired up, and I just can't stop. So,
well, that's a good point that you bring up there. And I want to segue this just for 1 minute, if I can, Ricky, and I don't want to hijack it here either, but segueing off of that same information, when you're talking about, this is a state official delivering bad information on something that he has not bothered to educate himself on for his own specific job. I've seen this before. This is not first-hand information for me particular, but I have heard of instances from very credible sources in and around our area where somebody was selling a honey product in a location, and they were giving bad information. The health inspector was giving bad information about what they can and cannot do, because Missouri has a special honey law that we are not lumped in with the jams and jellies.
Cottage law.
Yeah, the cottage. So we have a special honey law here in Missouri. Now, I don't think most states actually have this particular. I don't know what everybody's state requires, but we have something that puts us in our own specific category. There are several inspectors that I know that do not know this. So what Melissa and I have done
Never
now
even
is
heard of it.
we actually take printed out version in a folder to any markets that we might go to. So that way, if somebody comes up, now I'm not going to start jamming it down his throat, probably not going to get a good reaction. But what I am going to do is be like, hey, respectfully, I would need you to read this. This is the law here. You can look it up on the state website yourself. Obviously, you're uninformed about this, but here it is. So that way, again, a little bit different scenario, but still talking about laws and how they react, and all of our government officials that are enforcing it. I'm sure this guy probably had all of the great intentions of doing his job. He probably needed to do his research a little bit better, obviously, especially since that was what he was being paid to do. But so again, for anybody listening, I think it's really important that you understand the laws more so than the people who are uninformed, and maybe even print off a version of whatever that might be. That way, if somebody comes at you, don't just take their word for gospel, because everybody doesn't know specifically the constant changing laws, especially when it comes to herbicides, pesticides, things like that. It's ever so changing, and the labels in which, again, changing too. So that's something that we should probably research ourselves and understand what that might be.
Yep. Well said.
Well, guys, we're going to close down the chat there. And I want to give a big shout out to the All Stars that came on tonight. And of course, that was Melanie and Dennis. We appreciate you guys coming on. That was awesome. We appreciate you. Oh, and Greg Burns, of course, and Charlie and JW. But no, mostly Melanie and Dennis. If you guys get a chance to meet them at the Naughty, man, talk to them. They're awesome. So we do appreciate them being on. And we'll be back on next Thursday at 8:30. We switched our time back a little bit just because of Amber's practices. And of course, we got Charlie tomorrow night, and we got Greg and Brian and Bruce on Wednesday night. So there's a lot of chat going on out there about bees. And, I really think this may be the most important time as the winter is getting near. Get your bees ready for winter, and then they'll be ready for spring. So
That's right.
Maybe we'll get Joey back on Tuesday night.
Yeah, don't forget about Joey on Tuesday. It's 100% confirmed. I don't care what Joey says. He's on Tuesdays. That's his chat night. Go there. He'll be on. Okay. No peer pressure.
Sounds great.
Or maybe JW is going to go live on Tuesday this time.
You
instead.
never know.
Yeah, he may come on before I get on. Who knows, right? So anyway, we appreciate y'all. We'll see you next Thursday.
See you, Ray.
See you.